We should be live now. All right, Nathan Burnett, episode 23. It's been a minute. I've just been busy with school, all that good stuff. But speaking of being busy with school, as you can tell, this is not my usual background. I actually stole a study room, so hopefully they don't kick me out or anything while we're recording this. But I'm here with my man Swisheel. He's been on the podcast before. He's well versed in his college basketball knowledge, and he's been on with Clan multiple times before. Him and Clan are real tight, and Clan is obviously huge friend of the channel as well. So the three of us need to get together sometime, man. But yeah. Well, what's been up with you, man? You want to shout out your YouTube, talk about any projects you got coming on, or you just same old with the YouTube stuff?
No, I've been like you, man. I've been like busy with everything in life lately, so I haven't been able to post in months. But I'm working on a lot of stuff to drop around draft time. It's funny, Clan actually, he was in town this weekend and came by and stayed at my place, and we were hanging out. We were talking about you and like your channel and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, just kind of chilling. Trying to get a bunch of draft videos ready to drop so they're ready for draft season. Get a bunch of my rants out of the way so that I'm ready for when all the inevitable bad takes come rolling in come draft day. So I'm ready, man.
Yeah, man. I mean, that surprised me that you said like you and Clan are always talking about me, but it made me feel good. But I like how you said like time to put out a bunch of videos and wait for the bad takes to roll through, because freaking I've been that's what I want to start out with first. Obviously, is March Madness, because I've been backing up Chet Holmgren all year. So whenever I made my bracket, I was like, well, if I don't pick Gonzaga to win it all, then now I seem like a hypocrite. So I picked Gonzaga, and then obviously they got knocked out last night, and obviously everybody's rooting for Coach K, but my parents are Texas Tech alums, and for me as the podcast, I was like, okay, now that Gonzaga lost, I need Duke to lose. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose all credibility if I even had any to begin with. So, and then they ended up winning. So I'm ready to hear all the you were wrong about Banchero comments and all that. So,
See, I don't know. See, that's where people overreact to the tournament so much. Like,
yeah,
I mean, I'm a former employee of UNC. I've always been a fan of them. My parents went there, so like me, every year I pick UNC to go all the way
yeah,
in at least one of my brackets. That's paid off so far. I wasn't sold on Gonzaga just because their guard play wasn't good. But the thing is, I don't think it has anything to do with Holmgren. I'll start off
yeah,
with that. Is like that's a lot of these things people kind of overreact to college a little bit. The first thing about Holmgren is I'm getting so sick of seeing the he's too thin argument. I'm like, this guy has now played at the highest level of basketball possible at every stage in his age. He hasn't had any major injuries. He's been productive at each one. I'm like, why am I supposed to believe that this is a thing now? I mean, this is an argument that's age old. We heard it with Durant because he couldn't bench a whole lot. We heard it with Andrew Wiggins coming in.
yeah,
We've heard it with, Kristaps Porzingis. We heard, oh, he's rail thin. We heard it with Alexei Pokashevsky just 2 years ago, and now, he's not great, but he's starting to come around and stuff. And we heard it with Bol, but the difference was he'd had a chronic injury history, and Holmgren hasn't. And frankly, Gonzaga kind of used Holmgren in like a PJ Tucker role. Like he's there to get stops,
yeah,
occasionally catch and shoot a three. And like the games where Drew Timmy was off and, Hunter Salas remains on the bench and I can't even think of the other guy's name. Oh God, I've gone blank. But Nimbard, whenever
yeah,
he's off, they let Holmgren cook, and those were games where he'd finish with these crazy double doubles. And frankly, I think his first tournament game, yes, it was against terrible competition, but he had like 17 points, 19 rebounds, 5 assists, and like 8 blocks. Who else is going to put up that stat
yeah.
line?
It's like
Like,
I remember if you remember whenever he had his college debut and you tweeted at me, I made that video, and I was like, I said in the video, I was like, everybody's gonna say that, oh, he had these stats because it was a crappy team. And then I said in the video, I was like, well, are you guys still going to be saying that whenever he plays UT, whenever he plays, um, Baylor or whoever? I was like naming a bunch of schools in their upcoming schedule, and we saw that in the tournament. He's having seven blocks a game, 8 blocks a game, 9 blocks a game, and I see again that argument. He's too skinny. It's like he's not getting that many points, but that's sort of his role, is to not get points. It's to play defense. He's getting huge rebounds, he's getting blocks, and I see a bunch of people on my side that are like, well, like you said, like, well, Durant was always called skinny, and then they always fire back with, there's only one Kevin Durant, man. But I really think that he has the potential to even become like defensive player of the year whenever he's in the NBA, if he keeps these crazy block numbers up. Because have we ever seen anybody in the NBA average like more blocks than points, like double-digit blocks for a season? Or
I don't think we have. And like, to that point, I don't know if he will, but like one thing I bring up too, I just said he had weak competition his first round, but I mean, he played Memphis and he matched up against Jalen Duren, who's for all intents and purposes a lottery pick, and that's a guy who's 18, reclassified to play, is a brute force guy, and he has like 55 to 60 pounds on Holmgren.
Yeah.
And what I hated was there kept being the video clip getting shared around. It was Duren backing him down and Holmgren hitting the floor, and then Duren throws down this vicious dunk while Holmgren's laying there.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, see, he can't handle him. I'm like, well, one, Holmgren flopped like crazy on that play trying to get the call. He should have stood his ground. It was a terrible flop. And in fact, after that play, the Gonzaga bench was warned by the official, like, stop the flopping or else I'm going to call a technical on you.
Yeah.
2, he dominated Jalen Duren all game. Duren's first 3 possessions under the basket were, like, insane blocks by Holmgren. Like, I think one of them he tried, like, a little turnaround hook. He sent it straight back in his face. Duren got the rebound. Then he tried to go up and under the basket, and Holmgren blocks it with his offhand. And then the next time down, he tried to straight dunk on him, and he blocked it again. I'm like, he handled him all game.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I'm rambling, but I can't stand this narrative that, let's wait till he gets to the NBA and sucks and is too thin before we say that. It's just seems like kind of an invalid concern, especially with the way the modern league is.
Yeah, you don't gotta apologize for rambling, man. That's the whole point of this. But I was gonna talk about like Jalen Duren in the Memphis game, but I want to talk more about Gonzaga and Chet Holmgren first, and then lead that into his game versus Memphis and everything. I think that Chet Holmgren again has and people are gonna say this is crazy, but I think that Chet Holmgren, if he keeps these sort of numbers up, which obviously is going to be very difficult because there is a huge difference in that college to NBA jump, but if he's playing as well defensively in the NBA as he is now, it's going to be a huge he will, if he does that, he's going to cause a huge shift in the NBA. And what I mean by that, before people start going off like, are you saying that Chet Holmgren's going to, be a staple in the NBA and all that? But what I mean is, ever since Steph Curry got drafted, and I've talked about this multiple times, ever since Steph Curry got drafted, and it started a little bit with Kobe too, we saw this shift into a more offensive game. Who can score more, the fastest, the best, screw blocks and steals. We want people that can get behind the arc. And recently, these past 2 years, the 2021 and the 2022 season, we've seen more of a shift to the importance of big men again in order to sort of space the floor. And then you've talked about international players coming in and that sort of thing. And we've seen, especially with the Cavs, which, again, you've talked about, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I've made a video about, the Cleveland Cavaliers are sort of pushing the narrative back and doing a 180 to push it back towards defense, which is what the Spurs did to win their championships. And now I don't know what they are now, but they've been 1 seed, 2 seed, 3 seed, whatever they are now. the Cavaliers, and I feel like Holmgren is gonna help sort of accelerate that, where his game is fully defensive, and wherever he gets drafted, we're gonna see that defensive game, and I think that's going to accelerate the 180 of the NBA, where it starts going back towards that defense again that it used to be, that it hasn't been for a while now.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll even one up that statement. Like, we're talking about the Spurs and Warriors. And I mean, if you go back to like 2013, 2014, San Antonio was looking at how Dallas beat Miami. And granted, we didn't have Dirk Nowitzki, who was insane in that series, but the Mavs did a really good job at spreading the heat out, using some clever passes to the interior for Tyson Chandler, letting Dirk kind of cook on the perimeter. They had a distributing point guard who could, hit threes from a standstill. They had an athletic slasher. And that's the kind of team we put together. We just put, I say we because obviously I'm a Spurs fan, but San Antonio put together the ultimate two-way team. I mean, you've got Tony Parker, who's a great scorer, slasher, dribbler, creator. I mean, you've got Danny Green, who's by the numbers arguably one of the best role players of all time, just with his ability to knock the three down, play transition D, play team defense, and just affect the game in minimal minutes. Then we had Kawhi Leonard, who wasn't quite a superstar yet, but there's that athletic rim runner who can knock down an occasional three, take guys one-on-one. We have Boris Diaw, who's an outside-inside threat, a passer, and then Duncan, who's like the anchor inside. And if you look at these teams that are now succeeding, they're very closely modeled after those Mavs, Spurs, and Warriors teams from that early 2010s phase. And like the Warriors team won the next year. It looked really good. I mean, you look, Steph Curry's running all over the place scoring like Tony Parker. Granted, he's a better shooter, way better. But I mean, Klay Thompson, he's a much better 3-and-D wing than Danny Green, but it's the similar style. And then, they had Harrison Barnes in there, who's that athletic rim runner who can hit a three, hit a mid-range shot. Draymond Green being that inside-outside guy who passes really well. And then they had Andrew Bogut as that defensive anchor. I mean, it's the same purpose that the Spurs had with their teams, and that's what kept winning. And now we're seeing this trend towards they want players to be able to do multiple things at a position. I mean, back in 2003, I think Jalen Duren would have been like top 3 pick, easy. And like Alperen Şengün last year, I think would have been like a top 3 pick in the early 2000s because he's a scoring machine in the paint. Can't play defense that well, but they didn't care then. Jalen Duren's similar to Dwight Howard. He's athletic. He blocks shots. Let's take him. But nowadays, you got to be able to do more. And frankly, going back to Holmgren, if you look at his game log, there was only one game this year where he didn't record a single block. And that was a game he played 24 minutes. He had 9.7 rebounds. Just wasn't, on his game. Every single other game, he's recording like 3 blocks, 4 blocks. I mean, there are more games that he's recorded 4 blocks a game than there are games where he recorded a single block.
Exactly.
I mean, there's games with 6 and 7, and these games where he's doing that, he's scoring like 16 to 20 points and grabbing 8 to 12 rebounds in most of them. And if you can find another 7-foot guy, albeit his weight, who can score 15 points a game and get you 10 rebounds a game, all while blocking 3 to 4 shots a game and shooting 40% from beyond the arc, I'll give you my paycheck for the month because that is not common.
Yeah, I think I was about to say I think Gonzaga's biggest problem. I think he might as well be the team at this point, him and Timmy. I think Chet Holmgren's biggest issue, and I think this is pretty obvious, because of his height, is foul trouble. And people could say, well, they're playing more intense because it's March Madness, it's the tournament. But I feel like every single game that he has played in March Madness, he has fouled out, or at least had 4. Like the Memphis game, he fouled out, and I don't remember how many fouls he had in the games before that. But I know in the Arkansas game, I think he either fouled out or he had 4 again.
Yeah,
And
he
it's
fouled
like,
out the last 2 games. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, but that's something that is not really. Trying to think of how to phrase this. It's not really something he can work on. It's going to be hard to practice not drawing fouls because it's just something that comes with that height. It's like he stands there and somebody jumps and his hand is going to somehow hit the other person's arm and it's going to be called a foul when all he does is this.
Yeah,
It's just something that comes with the territory of being that height.
honestly, I'm glad you brought that up too, because one thing that's been thrown into the light with this March Madness, I don't know if you saw the UNC Baylor game by chance.
I didn't see it, but I was going to bring it up because I'm from Texas and you're obviously UNC, so.
Yeah, no, I'm a UNC fan, but I'm pretty even keeled when it comes to watching games. My friends would always laugh because I'd be working Carolina basketball games and I'd be in the stadium and they'd call a foul and all these people are like, "Oh, that was BS." I was like, I mean, you could hear the slap from here. Like it was a good call. But and some of those I didn't have problems with every call in that game, but I think that game threw into light. I mean, it seemed like things got a little chippy and all of a sudden the officials decided they were going to make themselves present in the game. And that's what I didn't really like was it just felt like credit to Baylor, they came back. They did a great job of coming back, and you have to, if you're North Carolina, you have to play the cards you're dealt, and they did, and they ended up coming away with the game. But I think what's frustrated me so much there is just there's so much lack of consistency in collegiate officiating, and we're seeing that with Holmgren. I know a lot of people had problems last night with his last 2 fouls. They're like, well, what the hell were those? They were terrible calls. And I'll admit the last 2 calls weren't great on him and stuff. But I think it's going to help. One thing that they need to talk about in the college game is giving them an extra foul and switching it to 6 fouls instead of 5. So having that additional foul will help. In terms of how the NBA officials call the game in the paint, although they've reverted a little bit this season, they're doing a much better job and giving benefit of the doubt and stuff like that. And they're going to allow inherently a little bit more contact. And then third, the college charge rules are all over the place.
Yeah.
They're much better defined in the NBA. And I mean, in college, if somebody jumps in the air and you jump under them, you really have no idea if they're going to call a block or a charge. In the NBA, that's automatically a block because you have to be set before the guy takes off. So I think he's going to benefit from there. But you're right. I mean, the only thing with him is just knowing when to be careful about his fouls because he's only fouled out I think like 4 times this season.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people who's very much like, okay, if you go through a game with 0 fouls, what are you doing? Like you have 5 for a reason.
Yeah.
Let's at least let's prevent some easy buckets and stuff that don't hurt anybody. But like you got him, you can use him. But it's these games where he'll get careless in the first half. And
don't pull a Zaza, but be aggressive.
Yeah, like make sure the guy misses a shot. Don't break his arm. But but like there were so many of these games where he'd get 3 in the first half and get pulled from the game early, and then the other team would catch up, and then they'd adjust at the half, and he'd come out and look much more poised, and he'd stay in the rest of the game. And if he just keeps that poise the whole game, I think you're right. That's what he needs to work on. Just knowing when to be careful and when not. But I think it's more of an indictment in collegiate officiating than it is on his play style.
Yeah, that's really all I got for Chet. I mean, the ref thing is always going to be a problem. People complain about it every season. I mean, it's a problem at the college level. It's a problem at the NBA level. You got to remember that they're human. I mean, I don't watch baseball. I'm not a baseball fan, but my brother is, and he used to play like little league and stuff. And I remember they had like a metal sign on all the fields that said, please remember these players are kids, the coaches are parents, and the umpires are volunteers.
Yeah.
Um,
Those volunteer umpires. Shout out to volunteer umpires and referees everywhere because they take a lot of abuse from
Yeah.
people. I'm not saying they always make good calls, but like, come on, they're giving you your time. These professional ones, I think you get a little bit more leeway to criticize. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They're people. I mean, they make mistakes. It is what it is.
Shout out Brandon in the chat, by the way. I saw your message. What's up, man? Because I saw as soon as Gonzaga beat Memphis, everybody on Instagram, of course, was like, refs versus Gonzaga and all that, or whatever, or backwards. You know what I meant? Memphis versus refs. And I was like, y'all, people make that excuse every time their team loses, and then I became the hypocrite because like Gonzaga lost, and I was like, there were some bad calls in that game. Because like, did you see the one where there was literally two Arkansas? It was, I think, in the second half. It was towards the end of the second half. Literally, two Arkansas players hit the ball out of bounds. But there was like a Gonzaga player like a little bit further back, and they were like, "We gotta review this," and it took them like 2 minutes, and everybody watching the game was like, "He's nowhere even near the ball. That's clearly off Arkansas."
No, yeah, it's one of those things where like, I'll say this, like was I pissed at this comeback in the North Carolina Baylor game? Hell yeah, I was pissed. I was scared to death that their season would be blown. And did I think Manick deserved to be ejected? No, I don't think so. But you could interpret the rule that way and everything. And when I was working at UNC, I got the privilege of being able to every now and then talk to Coach Roy Williams and stuff. And that's one of like the sagest pieces of advice I've ever gotten from a Hall of Fame coach. Is like I asked him because I remember being upset. I felt like they'd played Virginia and they had barely lost, and this was in the like 2018-2019 season when Virginia won the title that year. They had DeAndre Hunter, Mamadi Diakite, guys like that. Carolina had Kobe White, Nasir Little, Cam Johnson. They were both really good teams, and they lost by like 4 to Virginia. And down the stretch, there were a couple of questionable calls, and I was just like, how do you bounce back from that? Like feeling like you could have won that game if not for those calls. And he was like, well, that's one way to look at it. He goes, but also
it's just part of the game.
Like, we could have won the game with those calls if we'd made our free throws. If we'd executed on defense the way I wanted. And that's kind of what he said is, officiating, it sucks when it doesn't go your way, but there are always ways to win games despite stuff like that. You've got to have a plan B and a plan C, and it comes down to playing your game, executing well. And if you let the officials' calls get to you, it will start to affect you like that. So it's just playing with what you're dealt and doing your best to make it go your way, even if it seems like it's not. So I'll give him credit there. It gave me a different outlook on the game and stuff where like, hey, I'm going to focus on what I can control, and whatever else happens, we deal with when we come to it.
Yeah. If I'm shaking my head, by the way, it's because I'm reading Brandon's messages in the chat. We'll get to that later, Brandon. He's a Houston fan, so he's just spamming Jalen Green Rookie of the Year in the chat. But
hey, Jalen Green's had a resurgence, man. He's one of those I knew would be a late bloomer, just the style he plays. But Jalen Green's fun to watch. I mean, I don't think he'll be Rookie of the Year, but I think he's going to have a really good career in Houston.
Yeah. I'll get to that later because I want to bring up this year's rookies. But you said earlier, you were like, people take the tournament too seriously, and like as a you were like, people use it as sort of their test of draft picks when it's really no different from any other game, sort of is the way I took what you were saying. And so that's sort of my question for you is because I get the Jabari Smith and Jalen Duren mixed up because they're both J names, but I remember like it might have been Jabari Smith, but I think you were back in Jalen Duren whenever you were talking with Clan, right? And then like Memphis lost, so I was like, I'm gonna bring this up with Swisheel. So like, has March Madness changed any of your draft perspective at all, or has it stayed relatively the same? Because I mean, I watched the I've always been backing Chet Holmgren, and then he lost. But even though he lost, I'm still full gung ho on Chet Holmgren. I think Banchero is a little bit better in my eyes because he did advance on Texas Tech. But at the same time, the reason I never said that. If you go back and watch all my takes at Banchero, I never said that he was a bad player. I said that he would still be like a number 2 pick. I just said for the Spurs specifically, I didn't want Banchero because I think Banchero doesn't have the correct mindset and personality to be drafted by the Spurs because the Spurs is all about family. And even in March Madness, if you go back and watch Banchero on plays, he's clapping for the ball whenever his team is down. He's like, let me do it myself. Like he puts on the Infinity Gauntlet like Thanos, and he's like, I'll do it myself. And that's not the attitude you have to have on the Spurs. I mean, that's sort of why people are always like, well, if Pop's the best coach, why is DeRozan performing better on the Bulls? It's like because DeRozan didn't fit Pop's system. Pop's system is team ball. Despite DeJounte Murray scoring 30 points a game, Pop's system is team basketball. And nowadays we don't really see that, especially in the last couple of weeks. Like just in the week of March. Or I mean the month of March, we've had, like a bunch of 40, 50, 60-point games. Devin Booker goes off for 70, and that's what DeMar DeRozan is doing with the Bulls. DeMar DeRozan is just kind of putting the team on his back, especially with Zach LaVine and I can't think of the Bulls players right now because I just had a total brain fart. But like almost all of them are out, and
yeah,
so
Lonzo's out.
It's like, they're like, why is DeRozan performing better on the Bulls if Pop's the best coach? It's like, because that's not how Pop plays basketball. And I feel it's the same way with Banchero. If Banchero gets drafted by the Spurs, he's going to try and do everything himself, and that's just not how the Spurs do things. So,
it's one of those things where, like, I won't say that the NCAA tournament isn't a bigger stage, because it is. I mean, it's every single game's nationally televised. People are watching, and it's a chance to see what these guys can do when they're under pressure. But my big thing is I don't like when people let one game overshadow an entire body of work.
Yeah.
So like we brought up Jabari Smith, against Miami, he couldn't buy a freaking bucket. He shot 19% from the field in that game and only finished with 10 points, made 3 shots total. I mean, one of them was a 3-pointer. So, I mean, you're looking at, 7 points that he scored from the field, and then he got another 3 from free throws. Yeah. I mean, abysmal. And yeah, he grabbed 15 rebounds, did decently well on the defensive end, but a lot of people are saying, "Oh, he can't cut it." But I mean, just the game before, he put up 20 points and 14 rebounds. In the weeks before, he played Tennessee, put up 27 and 8 against a really good Tennessee team. And I'm just like, I don't get having one game be the be all end all in the tournament. And we see this a lot where somebody will perform well in the tournament and people get all in on them. Big example, Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, he went off in the national title game. And people laughed at me because I was like, I just don't see why everyone's so hype on this guy right now. Became a first-round pick. What's he done since then? I mean, he's not a bad player, but people were talking like, oh my God, he's the second coming after this 130-point game in the tournament. And, similar, I see a lot of people down on Walker Kessler with Auburn. I knew Walker when he was at Carolina, and I won't say he's the best big man choice out there, but he had a great season. And I don't believe that just because he had a tough matchup in his last game and, couldn't cut it very well, that he's going to fail in the NBA. And by a similar token, I'm starting to see a lot of these mock drafts have Jaden Ivey at the top. I mean, and yeah, Ivey's having a good tournament, but I don't believe that Ivey is automatically better suited for the NBA than Banchero or Holmgren or Smith just because he's having a good tournament. Yeah, the college game is completely different. I mean, that's what my favorite college player of all time, my favorite basketball player of all time is Tyler Hansbrough. I mean, he's like the ultimate effort guy. He was incredible at North Carolina. He dominated at UNC. He's their all-time leading scorer. He's like the all-time NCAA leader in free throw percentage. I mean, he's one of the best college players ever. I mean, he didn't cut it in the NBA. So, are we going to say that since he was dominating in college, back in 2009 and all of that, that he turned out to be a better NBA player than his teammate, Danny Green, who didn't post spectacular numbers in college, wasn't even the tournament team. I mean, Wayne Ellington won the most outstanding player of that tournament and was a second round pick. And now Green's become probably the best NBA player of anybody that was on that team. And so, yeah, I don't mind using it as a way to critique and see how guys handle pressure and stuff. But, all these people saying, oh, Holmgren can't cut it because he lost to, X team or whatever. I don't buy. And one thing, I'm sorry, I'm rambling again. I know you said it was okay,
no, you're
but
good,
I don't.
Man.
Like one thing that was nice to see with Banchero last night. One thing I was worried about with him all season is he'd get real lackadaisical and lazy sometimes when he wasn't involved.
Exactly.
And if he wasn't getting the ball, he'd just kind of trot over to the corner and sit there on offense. And I was thinking, okay, I don't like this. It seems like he kind of takes himself out of the play if it's not geared towards him. And then when he'd get the ball, if he went up against some physical defense, he'd settle for a pretty bad contested jump shot. You go back to like his UNC Duke games, his Virginia games, the games they lost against like Florida State and stuff. He has really good defenders on him and he's forcing up jump shots.
Yeah.
What I like to see this past game is, I mean, he had a tough assignment in Williams from Texas Tech. And there were a couple times there that in the second half, he just put his head down, hit him with a nice spin move, and finished strong. And he was going to the ball if it wasn't a play drawn for him. And we saw that second half, especially him start to shine a little bit and develop as a playmaker. And that's what you look for in the tournament. Is I think he improved and showed he can do a lot more than what he has been doing.
So I'll piggyback off that. By the way, I appreciate Brandon for the follow. I did see it, but I didn't want to cut Swisheel off. And he did shout you out in the chat too. He said Swisheel is such a goat, so you don't gotta worry about rambling, man, because everybody agrees with me. You got good takes. That's why I got you on here. So I mean,
no, Brandon's the goat for following you.
Yeah.
Hashtag goat Brandon.
But that's exactly what I mean with Banchero, and people make fun of me because I pronounce it every time. I say Banchero and people say I'm wrong. I say Banchero, people say I'm wrong. So, I mean, I don't know what it is at this point. But I said that again in my video where I was talking about Chet Holmgren. I said, you can look at stats, but stats and eye tests are two different things. Appreciate Penrose for the follow. I really do appreciate it. I just completely lost my train of thought. Banchero.
Eye test and stats.
Yeah. I was talking about in my video of Holmgren versus Banchero. I was saying, like, if you look at Banchero, he like exactly like you said, he doesn't have much that he's doing off ball, and that goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. It's like he just kind of chills out until his team is like 10 points behind, and then he's just like, all right, time to go Super Saiyan mode. And then he's like, I'm gonna do everything and stay out of my way. And whenever he's not getting that sort of, when it's not being played through him, he just kind of is lazy. And I'm gonna make a comparison. I don't know how people are gonna take it, but that it sort of reminds me of Harden this year. Because if you look at, everything that happened with Harden and KD, Harden requested a trade, partly because of Kyrie's vaccination stuff, but also because, he was like, people were saying, he would roll his eyes whenever plays were drawn up through KD. And it's like, Harden, you have to realize that KD is just that guy. And, Harden was pissed that he isn't getting the same recognition that he did in Houston. You know, he's not the first option anymore, and he decided that he wanted to get a trade. And in my opinion, he still isn't the first option. You know, Embiid is still that first option on the Sixers, so I don't really know what changed for him there. But you know, but I think that's a comparison you can make is. Harden, you know, he didn't like being the second or third option behind KD and Kyrie, and I think Banchero is going to be the same kind of way where he's a rookie coming in, and he's sort of got this ego with himself, and he's going to be mad when the game isn't being played through him, because that's what we're seeing now. You know, I don't like talking down on players. I usually like hyping them up instead, but Banchero's just got too much of a head on him. You know what I mean? So
I'll say I don't know if it's so much his ego or that he just wasn't sure how to affect the game without the ball. Because we see that from a lot of people. We saw it from his teammate. His teammate's a perfect example of someone who doesn't have the eye-popping stats, but I think is going to be really good. AJ Griffin. He struggled early on to find his place with this Duke team because on his high school team, he's the guy. And then he comes in to play at Duke, and there's some returning guys. There's the number one player in the nation on there. And I think both of them just at times were having trouble finding their place and how to actually play with people instead of having people play with them. The only reason I say this is because I've never met Banchero or anything, and he seems to handle himself pretty well in interviews and all that, compared to James Harden. But yeah, from my eye test, you're right though. I mean, it comes across as like laziness or frustration, and it may not be, and all that. So that's where I did like seeing. It was clear he'd put work into what am I gonna do if, you know, something is happening to where I'm not getting the ball. And we watched him last night go set a lot of impromptu off-ball screens for guys, and that made a big difference down the stretch, especially for Jeremy Roach, their point guard, getting going and everything. So I won't necessarily say he has an ego yet, but yeah, just learning how to affect the game even when you're not being force-fed the ball. That's a problem a lot of young guys have.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all the best players in high school. It's tough to change that mentality, and that's why the Spurs were so special is you got guys who could adopt that mentality quickly.
Yeah.
Even if they were the best player on that team, they knew how to take a role.
Yeah, and that's why that goes back to something I've always said that I was saying early on in the season, which is don't trade for Ben Simmons, because you know I felt like he was gonna have sort of that same attitude, and I mean the Nets traded for him, and he's still not even playing, which I won't even touch any of that. But it was funny though, because like I said, my mom's a Texas Tech alumni, and so she was going to she. Like the only time she watches college basketball is whenever Tech is playing, and so they were about to tip off with Duke, and it was she watched me in the living room see like Gonzaga lose, and so I was like, well now that I said to her, I was like, well now that Gonzaga lost, I kind of need Duke to lose because of Banchero, and she didn't know who he was because again she doesn't really keep up with college basketball. But, you know, they're showing the pre-game, you know, warm-ups and everything like that. And I was like, this guy. And I pointed to number 5. And I was like, that's the new guy everybody's talking about. I need him to lose so that I keep some credibility. And I go to the gym later that night. I was at the gym during the Duke Texas Tech game. And during the second half, I just get a text from my mom that says, "You're right, Nathan. Number 5 can kiss my ass."
Tell your mom that's great. Your mom's one of my new favorite people. Anyone who hates on Duke, I'm gonna love. So
yeah, you went. I knew you. I knew whenever we talked about Banchero, it was gonna go that way with you being from UNC and him playing on Duke. I knew that was gonna come up eventually.
I respect the hell out of Duke. They're a very well run program, but you know I got to root for them to lose.
Yeah, there's
how it goes.
There's this guy on YouTube that does like states as people. and he did a couple videos during like COVID and stuff like that, and he did one for like North Carolina, and he's like, I mean, on the upside, the families can't be together to tear themselves apart from the UNC Duke rivalry. He's like, March Madness was canceled, so now families can be together, or something like that. Oh, that's the other thing. I got notes, like we were joking about on Twitter. We're Woj up in here. We got notes. So I just checked the score. That's what I was doing on my phone. St. Peter's. What's your opinion on them? I mean, I just checked the score. It's like 29-33. Like they're keeping up with Purdue, and like they're gonna be one of the if they win today, they'll be one of the first, if not the first, if I remember, 15th seeds to ever make it to the Elite Eight. And I think the lowest seed to ever win the whole thing, which I'm not saying St. Peter's will, but if they do, it's going to be legendary, because I think the lowest seed to ever win the title was, I think, 8th seed Virginia. I looked it up a little while ago because I was thinking about doing a video on it if they win today.
It's an 8th. Yeah, because that was that, I think it was that 2014 tournament that was the weird one where it was like Kentucky versus Connecticut. It was the 8 seed versus the 7 seed, and they're like, this is one of the lowest seed matchups ever. I'll tell you, man. They're St. Peter's. I actually did pick them to beat Kentucky.
Really?
Yeah, I'm really big on the 15 seed upsetting 2 seeds, and I've gotten.
That's fair.
I'm like weird about mid-major basketball. I do keep up with quite a bit of it because there's always just these gems of teams that are there. And I remember
that's why I called you up, man. I was like, it's March Madness. I don't keep up with college basketball. I need Swisheel. Call in reinforcements.
Well, it's funny because, like, I remember, granted, I'm known for picking against Duke because I don't like them a lot. But I remember back in the day picking Lehigh over Duke as a 15 seed because there was this stud on Lehigh named C.J. McCollum. And I was just like, there's no way Austin Rivers is going to be able to hang with this kid. He's going to light him up. Sure enough, he did. And they ran Duke out of the tournament first round. And then in 2012, 2013, one of my good friends went to Georgetown. And I was like, dude, they're going to lose to Florida Gulf Coast. Like, I've watched them. They're like dunking over everybody. They run these 5-out sets. They are going to kill Georgetown with Otto Porter. And he didn't believe me, and they did. And Kentucky's just, Ty Washington's been hurt. Kellen Grady hadn't been able to hit anything the latter half of the season. And I was just like, they're on such a poor streak, and they're not defending well against outside shots. Mm-hmm. It makes sense for a team who's built on that to beat them. Now, granted, I picked that, but I'll give Shaheen Holloway, their coach, credit. That St. Peter's team is running incredibly advanced play sets on offense. I mean, stuff that I've hardly seen major college basketball teams run. I mean, they are pro-designed sets, and these guys are playing out of their minds playing through them. So, I mean, he's got guys with high IQ. He's got a high IQ. He's a really soft-spoken coach that just believes in his kids. Mm-hmm. I didn't see them getting to the Sweet 16, but I did pick them to win. I think the last big Sweet 16 run I can remember was VCU back in the day, and I don't remember what seed they were, but that was Shaka Smart's big break, and even then, 2 of their players turned into NBA players, and Eric Maynor and Larry Sanders. But so I'm excited to see them, and this is why I love March Madness. Is these are a bunch of upperclassmen guys. Like, experience matters at this level. In the NBA, you've got guys like John Morant, who's been in the league 3 years. He'll tear you up. It doesn't matter that he's only been in the league 3 years, but 3 years in college compared to a freshman is a lot. So you get these kind of things. So it's been fun to see them execute and play well. I don't know if they'll beat Purdue because Purdue's got some experience and really talented players, but it's been fun watching those guys run through the tourney so far, man.
Yeah, it's like I know what's likely going to happen because Purdue always makes a deep run, but I kind of want St. Peter's to win because like not only would it be like sort of historical, but it's like also I can like low key make a video about it, so views. But the one of the, sort of the last things I have for college here before we and if I'm looking to the side, by the way, it's because people keep walking past the room, and I'm hoping nobody like comes in.
Dude, that's fine.
But one sort of the last thing I have for college basketball before we sort of get into NBA stuff again is pretty simple question. Besides the top, like most popular five, I would say, which is like Chet Holmgren, Banchero, Jalen Duren, Jabari Smith, and somebody else. Like, is there anybody that's sort of you think is going under the radar that you really like in college right now, that you have kept an eye on, or that you really like that you think is going to be sort of lower in the draft, like maybe like out of the lottery, like 15, 16, or even lower than that, might be like a pick 20 and ends up being great? Because like wasn't Keldon Johnson for the Spurs like a number 19 or 20 pick?
Yeah, he was pick 29 actually.
Oh wow.
There's a couple guys. One of them has recently started to garner some attention. It's Terry Eason from granted, he's a transfer. He played at Cincinnati. But he's like a 6'8" combo forward who can just do a bit of everything. He's not like a great three-point shooter per se. I mean, he's like 36% on the season, but only takes like 2 a game. But I mean, he's just a really good all-around player who, I think he's been in the league 2 years. I think he might play his way into the late lottery with how he's been playing of late, because he's shown the ability to play make. He's a pickpocket, and he gets a block a game. I mean, that's incredible in terms of what he's been able to do there. I'll shout out. I tweeted about him the other day. I'm sticking with my North Carolina bias, but I mean the numbers don't lie. Brady Manick, that guy's been a revolution. He's going to be a 1-year player for Carolina since he's a grad transfer.
I've seen his name float around, but I haven't looked into him or watched any of his games.
Yeah, I mean, watch him tonight, man. He's an older player, so that's the thing. But I mean, he's a 6'9", 6'10" stretch 4. I mean, he shoots 40% from 3 this year. He's averaging 27 points per game in the tournament, and I mean, he ripped apart Marquette. He ripped apart Baylor till he got ejected. I mean, he's been incredible this year, and though he's not a sexy name, he's probably a second rounder at best. I got to think with how the league's trending that a 6'10" guy who can come in off the bench and hit 40% of his threes,
I mean,
at that kind of clip.
I mean, if we want to talk about non-sexy names, I mean, not to have a 12-year-old mind, but Clan just did a video about a guy whose last name is Cockburn, so I mean...
Kofi is another... there's 2 guys that stand out there. Kofi's great over at Illinois. Oscar Tshiebwe at Kentucky is one to watch. I don't know how his game will transfer to the NBA since it's a very old-fashioned style play, but that guy... I mean, he had multiple 2020 games this year. He's got a pretty basic set of post moves, but I mean, he's got a high motor. And for a guy who West Virginia didn't want because they said he didn't try, I think he proved them wrong. Travion Williams at Purdue, he's a power forward there. He probably might be able to play like a bigger small forward in the league, but I mean, he's a senior. He's 12 points. 8 rebounds a game. Last year was averaging 16 and 10. I mean, shoots a 38% clip from 3, but he doesn't take many threes, so that helps. But I mean, he's very good in the pick and roll. That's a good player. I mean, there's a lot of these guys that are going to start to stand out.
I'm sure Cockburn has literally heard like all the jokes about that name.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, he can turn around to his bullies that he had in middle school and high school and be like, in a year, and possibly be like, who the fuck is playing in the NBA now? Not y'all. So.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not necessarily an underrated name because I think he's definitely a lottery pick. But people, give some respect to Benedict Mathurin, please. He is by far my favorite prospect in this draft. And no, he does not have the same kind of ceiling that AJ Griffin or Banchero have. But You can't tell me that any NBA team wouldn't want a guy that scores 18 points a game, gets 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and half a block, only turns the ball over once a game, shoots 53% from 2, and shoots 38% from 3. I mean, that guy, he can do everything on the court at a high level. And to me, that's what you want in a player. Who says no to that? I mean, I don't know if you saw that dunk where he just obliterated the guy the other night. Granted, he lost, but to Houston the game after. But he has been on fire some games in this tournament, and that Arizona team, all 5 of their starting 5 will be NBA players, whether this season or next season. Yeah. And he's the best one out of the bunch. I think he deserves like top 8 consideration for a pick, if not top 6.
Yeah, man. So sort of shifting into the NBA here. We've talked about coaches. You talked about the UNC coach. You've talked about the Gonzaga coach, and then obviously Coach K. So another historical coach that is known for his wins and his longevity. Obviously, us being Spurs fans, Pop recently won the win record. So whatever your thoughts are on that, and then obviously we have to ask the question now, which is when does he retire and who replaces him? Because I've talked about this on previous episodes, so I'm not gonna go too long here. I'm just gonna let you go, but just to start the conversation off, I was all in, full eggs in one basket on Becky Hammon. I was ready for her. I've gone to games and I've seen her with my own eyes in person, behind the sideline, like with Pop. I've been, I would say, like 20 rows back from her and Pop, and saw how they interacted with each other, and I was so ready for Becky Hammon to take over because I felt like she could do it. And now I have no idea who it's going to be. I've seen multiple names thrown around. I saw the most recent one was the Jazz coach, and I don't know much about him. I think it is kind of ironic though that we got the win record against him, and then we're asking to recruit him. But I mean, I was full set on Becky Hammon, so I've no strong or opinions one way or the other on any of the other coaches. I joked about last episode how I would love to get an old coach that worked with the Spurs, but they're all on playoff teams now. Monty Williams, Mike Budenholzer, Suns and the Bucks. Steve Kerr obviously has Curry and Klay Thompson. He's not coming back anytime soon. So
yeah. Even the Jazz coach used to coach the Austin Toros.
Yeah. But I have no idea who we're gonna get now. I don't. And the Pop win record, I already did a sort of a video about what it means to me. So I don't know. It's just he's been here forever. You can't think of the Spurs without thinking of Pop. And I know some people that I know a few people that actually don't like Pop, and I'm like, you can't be a basketball fan and not respect the man. But they're actually they brought up the fact like how he became coach, which was, he was an executive before he was a coach, and then as an executive he basically fired the other guy and hired himself. But it's like he saw the future in him being successful as the coach, so I don't blame him for that. And he's done tremendous things, and nobody can ever take that away from him.
Well, I mean, yeah, I remember that because people hated when he was hired, and that's the funny thing is he's exalted now, but everyone was like, he has no experience. He's going to run the team into the ground, and since then they've risen higher than ever before. And the thing about Pop, for me, I don't know when he's going to retire.
I forgot to mention this. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, but
you're good.
I forgot to mention. I do know that his contract is either up next season or 2023. But you can, with retirement, you can retire pretty much anytime you want. But I could see him seeing his contract through, but I don't know what we do after that.
Yeah, I guess my answer is, I really don't care when he retires. As long as Pop wants to coach this team, I'm fine with it. And it's funny because I know I have said I'm biased, but having met both Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski and seen how they coach, I think his style relates a little bit more to that of Roy Williams. One thing about Pop and about Roy at Carolina, he is much more than a coach. I mean, he is every role in between. For some of these kids, he's like a second father or a first father. I mean, he's a mentor, he's a counselor, he's a guy they can go to. He teaches them about the game, he teaches them about life. I mean, I don't care what your political views are, if you agree with him or not. To preface this, my whole idea is, I mean, Peter Holt was one of the biggest donors to the Trump campaign, and Pop has loudly been a Biden supporter, and all that. And neither of them have a problem with each other. Holt doesn't care what Pop says. Pop doesn't care who Holt gives his money to. Yeah. So there you go. You can have views and still keep the focus on basketball. It doesn't have to just be not talking about anything. But, you know, whether you agree with his political views or not, he's encouraging his players to get out and learn about the world and the spectrum of things. He's just there for guys in a way that lots of other coaches aren't. And it's funny, I was texting, I don't know if you remember Matty from when I was on OOC. He was Spurs fan blog a while on Twitter.
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Nah, dude, I'll have to introduce you because you'd love Matty. He's like passionate about the Spurs. He's got some great takes. But
all right,
I was texting him after Pop won that game, and to me, obviously DeJounte got to him, but the first person to get to him besides DeJounte was Rudy Gay, who doesn't even play for Pop anymore. He plays on the team that he just beat.
Yeah.
And he's over there. And Juancho Hernan Gomez played one game for Pop, and he was the second guy to get to him over there and congratulate him and thank him for, you know, his time for just the few days he was head coach. I mean, how many coaches do you see having that kind of effect on players? And Mike Krzyzewski is a fantastic coach. He's one of the best X's and O's number guys by far. And I know he lost his last home game when they had the big ceremony for him, but how many players do you see with the kind of relationship that we saw from the Spurs with Pop in that locker room do that with their coaches? I mean, they're hugging him like he's family and stuff like that. And granted, in Krzyzewski's credit, a lot of these guys are there for 1 year and they just don't get to know him as well. But like, I mean, he means something to these kids. He's the guy for DeJounte. He's the guy that took a chance on him when it seemed like nobody else would. And they've helped each other to flourish. I mean, there's much more to the game of basketball than drawing up plays on the court in Greg Popovich's eyes. And that's why there's this strong culture that's built here where, you know, we have a guy from Argentina and a guy from the British Virgin Islands or whatever who moved to San Antonio of all places, stayed there for 20 years and continue to live there. I mean, I like the city of San Antonio, but come on, man. Like, those guys have the income to live anywhere in the world, and they choose to stay there. And that starts with him. And, you know, there's a reason despite the Spurs being bad, there's a reason that half the league has hired coaches who have studied under this guy because they want them to come in and try to replicate that success with their teams. I mean, other teams recognize that he goes about things the right way, and they want to do that too. So love him or hate him, you can't deny just how much he means to the franchise and to the game of basketball as a whole. And you know, he gets criticized for so many things, but when it comes down to it, and this is where I equate him to Roy Williams, if you're a Carolina fan, you would see this every year. Oh, Roy's outdated. He's got to go. Look at these rotations he's running. I mean, sound familiar?
Yeah.
And then 3/4 of the way through the season, Roy would switch up the starting five in a way that nobody had seen coming. And one of them was eerily similar when he moved he decided to start a shooting guard at power forward and run a small ball unit. You remember what we did in the bubble?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like something not a lot of people really saw coming, and it works, and he goes with it. So, Pop's just an incredible person and an incredible coach, and
Yeah.
I will take him as long as he wants to be here. As far as replacing him, I'd love Becky. I'd love Ettore Messina if he came back from coaching in Italy and got his shot. I mean, Quinn Snyder, he's the name because he's both played and assisted for Mike Krzyzewski, and then been under Pop's mentorship as the D-League coach and stuff like that. I just don't understand why he'd leave Utah unless they had a complete teardown. But
Yeah.
it's gonna be tough to replace him, man. And I know a lot of people think that, if you fire Pop and get a different coach, things are gonna get better, and they're not gonna instantly get better. It's like I told people last year. They thought if we got rid of DeRozan, things would instantly be better.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't. We started off this season rough. While we might be starting to gel now, I mean, think back to those losing streaks at the start of the season. We missed DeMar DeRozan, and we will miss Pop when he leaves too. So I'm not in any hurry, but whatever he decides to go, I'll wish him well.
Yeah, that's why I liked Becky so much, because again, like, Becky had been like interacting with Pop, so she sort of knew what the deal was. And Tim Duncan had the famous Hall of Fame speech talking about Pop, but nothing that Tim Duncan said in his Hall of Fame speech about Pop was anything new. We already knew the sort of relationship that those two had. We knew that Pop was another sort of father to him. We knew how close he was with Tim Duncan, and yeah, I bought the newspaper whenever it came out. I told my friends at work, because I work at a grocery store, and I told them, I said, yo, Pop broke the win record tonight. You best believe I'm going to be here when the store opens and buy that newspaper, because it's going to be front page. Sure enough, I walk in at 6 o'clock in the morning, all the newspapers are stocked up, and it's front page. It's, we dumped Gatorade on them in the locker room. It was like we won our sixth trophy. And, of course, Pop being humble was like, it isn't a championship. We still got a game tomorrow, so let's go. And yeah, and the whole thing with you saying, it's San Antonio, and as much as you love San Antonio, I hope I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this joke, because I live in San Antonio, and I go to a San Antonio college, and a lot of my subscribers are Spurs fans, but my dad is also from San Antonio, and I remember him telling a joke on Christmas, and a lot of the tamale places were sold out, because he had waited to get tamales until Christmas Day, when usually he does it like a week before.
Yep.
And so he was like, he comes back with the tamales, and he's like, oh, I had to go to like this really sketchy place to get them. It was like a drug deal. And I made a joke, and I was like, was there a washing machine on the corner? And he goes, son, it's San Antonio. There's a washing machine on every corner. But yeah, I mean,
no, and like, I love San Antonio. I never lived in San Antonio. I grew up in Brownsville, Texas, on the very tip. Shout out to my 956 peeps. But it's I love it, but it does not have the allure of somewhere like New York City or Boston, or just the type of things when people think of the big cities in the U.S. San Antonio doesn't come up very often.
Yeah.
And
it's usually Houston or Dallas or Austin or something.
Yeah, and as my last point about Pop, I think the ultimate view of him as a coach wasn't necessarily anything Tim said about him, but what he said about Tim at his jersey retirement. And it struck me because he said, they always ask that age-old question, if you could have dinner one time with anyone dead or alive, who would it be? And he said that he'd pick Tim Duncan. And I'm like, this is a guy Pop spent almost every day of his life with for 20 years. And he still thinks of him so highly as a person and a player that's who he'd pick out of everyone in history.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like if he could pick every member of his team, he would over anybody else. And that's just incredible caring from a coach right there. There's never going to be another coach like Pop.
I don't know how much time you got left because we're still at an hour, but I got some other stuff. But if you gotta go, just let me know. But
and hit me with it. I got like 10-15 minutes left.
All right, cool. I mean, we can just go. We can keep going with the record type stuff. LeBron recently got the 10K, 30K. What are your thoughts on that? And Ryan and Brandon are messing around with each other in the chat here. Ryan and Brandon are talking about toilet paper for whatever reason. So,
dude, Charmin's overrated. Go with the Scott double ply. It's just as cushiony and it's like $3 cheaper.
No, they're talking about do you scrunch or roll up whenever you wipe?
Oh, dude, it's a multifaceted process. You have to unroll it in a nice roll and then scrunch for ultimate ass coverage. So the debate's over.
Speaking of toilet paper, LeBron. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, man. The LeBron 10K, 30K. I mean, you only have 15 minutes left, so hopefully this doesn't unravel into a whole MJ versus LeBron GOAT debate. But
no, I mean, Grant, I'm always going to be an MJ guy. Just that's me, especially how I was raised. I remember being little and watching him in his last season with the Bulls and with his couple seasons with the Wizards. So most of it's just because I can remember about an NBA before LeBron James. That shouldn't take away from anything LeBron's done. For me, it's 1A, 1B, really. I mean, LeBron, even then, I hate ranking NBA players because not necessarily different eras, but and all that. Because I think any NBA player could be effective in just about any era. They're good. That's all that matters. I mean, come on. Bill Russell wouldn't be a dominant big nowadays with that kind of shot blocking prowess and as a lob threat. Like, come on. But Magic Johnson wouldn't be good just because he wasn't a great 3-point shooter. Come on. But LeBron's unique in that he's like probably the best at doing everything on the court. So like I got to give hats off to him, man. And like one thing about LeBron that's just cool is he plays it up, but he is from Akron. He's from a hard life. As a kid, he worked his way up. He had all this hype surrounding him. I mean, everything was set for him to just fail and disappoint everybody. And year after year, he's proved them wrong. Mm-hmm. And I remember 4 years ago, people saying, well, in 2 years when LeBron's 35 and he's fallen off, he is 37. He's still one of the best players in the league.
That's what everybody is talking about on Twitter. It's like about how everybody was saying 3 years ago he wouldn't be able to do this today. Well, look what he's doing today. Like you go on NBA Twitter any day of the week, you're gonna see something about that with LeBron.
Yeah, and it's funny. I remember having a conversation with one of my roommates back in college, back in like 2014, and we were talking about what LeBron would be past his prime. And it's funny because I think our prediction was pretty accurate. We were like, he's probably still going to put up these insane numbers just because he is that good. And he is one of the best players of all time. But our theory was he would get to the point where he couldn't carry a team with his numbers anymore. And I think we're seeing that with LA. Yeah. I mean, he's been dynamite this season, but they're still losing, and he needs help now, as opposed to I won't necessarily equate it with Cleveland and all that because he did have some help there, and he lost. But that first finals when, he was putting up like 40 points a game and in a triple-double average, like that's kind of how it feels now. He's putting up big numbers, but he just doesn't have anybody consistent to pass to or anybody who can hit a shot consistently with him or defend with him. And I think till the day he retires, he's going to be an amazing player and put up great numbers and be a fantastic role player. But I just don't think his body can take, and we've seen it. He's gotten injured a lot more lately. Poor guy. Like, that's got to suck. Yeah. You just want to play basketball and you can't a lot of times, but he's missed more games than we've ever seen recently, and I think it's starting to take a toll because he just physically cannot do that anymore. I mean, I think Kobe retired at this age, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah, and he started talking about like my body cannot do this anymore. Like I've got to go.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see him playing a few more years, and putting up big numbers.
I mean, he said he's gonna play until Bronny gets drafted. So I mean, that's a given.
I could definitely see that and see him playing well. I think just if he's going to compete for championships, they can't sell the whole team for him anymore. They've got to have him be a secondary or tertiary option to somebody and all that.
It's exactly like you said. Like he's the scoring leader right now, but it's still him, the Spurs, and the Pelicans like fighting it out for the play-in. So I mean, but I don't know how much time you got left. But with the I'll just give you 5 topics, and you can choose whichever one you want to use your time on. So I got the Westbrook hate, and then I got Spurs trades, 2021 rookies, which is like Jalen Green and stuff. I wanted to talk about your Cavs this year versus like 2014 Spurs, how they compare to each other. Contenders that are slept on in your opinion, so like Celtics and Grizzlies, and then sort of a minor one here, Karl Anthony Towns and Patrick Beverley, how they've sort of blended because Pat Bev said you have the potential to become the next MJ, which I don't know how to feel about that. But the day after Pat Bev told Cat he can be the next MJ, he dropped 60. And then Cat recently went on to say that he's the best shooting big man of all time, and everybody was like, you never played with Dirk. So
yeah.
But
yeah, I agree. It's Dirk.
Everybody,
I'll tell you what.
Everybody's talking about Pat Bev like sort of boosting up like Cat's ego and like all that sort of stuff. So
tell you what, I think I can tackle 3 of those real quick actually. Right. Let's see, what was that first one you mentioned?
The Westbrook hate.
Okay, my take on the Westbrook hate's simple. No matter what, don't send death threats to any kind of
if you're not a basketball fan
figure.
If you do that, you're not we don't accept you as a basketball fan.
I've always erred on the side. Granted, I've worked basketball operations before, and for me, it's been with college kids, and I've seen the things that these people yell at these kids. I've seen the reactions from the kids. I've seen college players looking at what's said about them on Twitter. Whether or not you think they do, they hear this stuff, and it does take a toll. Mm-hmm. Westbrook's an interesting situation because while I do feel bad for him, and he's getting an undue amount of hate, I mean, really, Westbrook's numbers aren't much different from any other season. Everyone talks about his turnovers. He's always had turnovers like that. Everyone talks about his field goal percentage. He's always had his field goal percentage be low like that. Really, the only thing that's different is his team is not winning, and he's in a huge market. And, as far as he goes, like, I feel sorry for him. I know how it feels to be called names and stuff. And to be in that national spotlight and have everyone saying those things for you has got to be awful. On the flip side, Westbrook's made no problem out of going out of his way to talk shit to other people.
Yeah.
And he has also said some pretty terrible things to other players and fans and people in general. So some of it is reaping what you sow, and you can't break down if people are now doing it in return to you. So while I do feel for him and all that, I'm like, some of this is you're learning what it feels like on the opposite end, even though I don't wish that on you. So I think he's got a valid point about the criticism. I also think he can take it as, okay, maybe I need to work on how I treat people some too.
Yeah, it's I agree with everything you said because it's like if you're sending death threats, you're not a basketball fan. But at the same time,
no,
it's like
psycho.
Yeah. But at the same time, he came up with the whole KD cupcake thing, and then the whole overreacting about the whole Westbrook thing, Westbrook has always been a thing ever since he was drafted. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
he's
just a
just
play on
losing now,
words.
so it's bothering him. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a play on words, like every NBA player has like some name like that where it's like you change their name around. Like, people call LeBron LeBum. So, like uh what was the other thing I was going to say about it? Oh yeah, like I made a video, and of course, Lakers fans and LeBron fans were not happy, but and that was sort of the whole point because it was sort of clickbait in a way, but the thumbnail said the tyrant King James, and it said
That was a good video. I
yeah,
remember that video.
I called it the LeBron media curse, and it went into exactly that. Westbrook is putting up the same numbers that he always has. The difference is he's playing on the fucking Lakers, and he's playing with LeBron, so he's got all these cameras around him, and every mistake is going to be amplified times 100. And and people were like, "Oh, you're talking about LeBron," and I was like, "No, I'm talking bad about social media around LeBron." John Morant literally deleted social media because, like you said, it's like even if you don't think they see it, they see it. John Morant deleted all of his social media because he was like, "Fuck this."
Yeah, I don't know. It's awful some of the things keyboard warriors will say about players and things like that. I don't know. I mean, I make a point, like my two things are I will never tag another player and instruct them on what they need to do as a player because
You're not the one that was drafted.
Yeah, get off your fucking high horse. They know they know their game. They have better coaches than you working on it. They know what they need to work at. Two, I will never refer to a player as trash. I hate that because the worst NBA player in the league could kick your ass on a basketball court.
Exactly.
I mean, did you see that video of like retired, almost 50-year-old Brian Scalabrine just torching the shit out of that high school kid?
I didn't, but I'll look it up after this.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, I could beat you. You were the worst NBA player out there." And he's like, "Dude, I made a championship roster.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I only averaged 2 points in my career, but I mean, he beat him like 21-0. He was like dunking on him." And Brian Scalabrine in the video, he's like, "Keep in mind, I'm overweight and I've been retired for 10 years," and he still massacred him.
Yeah.
I mean, put this in perspective. My dad went to UNC, and one of his friends went to high school with Brad Daugherty, the guy who played center for the Cavs. And by hanging out with him one day, my dad got invited to a 2-on-2 pickup game with one of Brad's friends, and it was Michael Jordan.
Oh, shit.
His whole Jordan moment story is funny. He said, he goes up to Jordan and was like, "Dude, I suck. And he said, MJ looks at him and goes, "Look, just give me the ball and I'll do the rest."
Yeah.
And he said they won, but Brad Daugherty, my dad said, had a broken leg at the time, and was just in Chapel Hill rehabbing for the next NBA season. And he said he was astounded because Daugherty could hop down the court faster than he could sprint down the court. Like, that's the level that these guys are at. They're incredibly gifted. So, yeah, be careful calling out NBA guys because they'll cook you. What was that next topic? The one right after the Westbrook one?
Spurs trades. You did a whole episode about that with Clan. So, I mean, I was just... I don't know if you want me to call out a specific trade or I was actually going to ask you though, like we've been talking about Spurs rebuilding and different things, and everybody was talking about Lonnie Walker being on the chopping block, maybe even Devin Vassell, sort of a different version of bench start bench cut here, besides the big three, which I would say is Primo, DeJounte, and Keldon. Who would you choose to keep, like, on the Spurs? Like, you can't touch them. We can trade the rest of the team away, but we have to keep this guy besides DeJounte, Keldon, and Primo. Probably Yaka, but I don't know.
I don't think Yaka. For right now, it's probably Devin. I still have to see more. Yeah. And see, this is one thing I will say, too, about the LeBron thing that ties into this. With your video, people were shitting on you without actually watching it. I get a lot of hate because I'll point out things with Spurs players and people think that I'm hating on them. I'm not hating on them. I'm making a commentary about what I see. And one thing with Jakob, he's been fantastic with us, but he does have his limitations. And I think he's coming up. This next year is his last year on this affordable contract. The way he's playing, he absolutely deserves a bigger contract. But if I'm going to dole out a bigger contract to keep a big guy around, I almost want someone who doesn't have the same limitations he does. And that being, he's not much of a low post presence. On pick and rolls, he still struggles to find the right spots. He doesn't have great hands off the roll either. And his free throw shooting is not great. Same thing, he doesn't really have much of a mid-range game. He's a serviceable big and all that, but I'm not above trading him. And I think they have to look at offers this summer. I know the name floating around is DeAndre Ayton. Would I pay him a max? Yeah, absolutely. I'd absolutely offer and see what happens. Whether or not that happens, that's entirely up to Phoenix and all that. So we don't know. But I mean, I would absolutely look at an upgrade at that position. I'm one of those guys that I don't necessarily think anybody is completely untouchable. Obviously, I don't want to trade a guy like DeJounte Murray, but my biggest thing with this team has always been pick a direction, and that's where I'm starting to get a little frustrated at the end of the year. I felt like the start of the year, we picked that direction. We didn't go after any big names. We picked some role players that fit with our current guys and said, all right, show us what you can do. And they showed us what they did at deadline. We moved off of Bryn Forbes, which was always going to be the plan. We started stocking up on picks. We realized DeJounte is the primary ball handler. We can't afford to keep paying Derek what we're paying him because, he just doesn't fit this team anymore. So we traded him to a team he does fit. And Boston's only lost like 3 games since they acquired him. They're killing it with him. And that said, I think Josh Richardson fits our system much better. But the thing that's getting me now is, we are trying to make this play-in tournament apparently, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I'm not one of these people that like, I want to root to lose. It's just, speaking of which, St. Peter's is now within 1 point of Purdue with 9 minutes left.
That's crazy.
Just throwing that in there. But I also just got to look at this from a long-term perspective. And one thing that's driving me nuts is we keep saying, make the play-in, it's experience. Well, really, it's not. Because the play-in's this new thing they put in with COVID where it's the 8th, 9th, and 10th seed duking it out. So 2 of the teams never should have been in the playoffs in the first place if you're looking at the traditional system. And, if we were getting in the playoffs and playing a 7-game series against the Nuggets, sure, I'd be all for it. That's valuable experience. Get these guys in there, seeing how a dominant team plays in the playoffs and learn from that. But, I mean, come on, man. Are you really going to tell me that one game against the freaking Pelicans in a play-in is going to change the direction of this franchise forever? Like right now...
More than a draft pick will?
Yeah. right now, we need help both from the draft and free agency. And I think this is a big offseason for it. We've got 3 picks. I mean, I'm one of the people, I don't necessarily think we need all 3. But I mean, you can use all 3 of them to move up high and get a high pick if you want. You can use those with Jakob or with Romeo Langford or Doug McDermott, someone like that, to trade for somebody else who, is a big name that fits. But I think with just the way we're going right now and with those trades, I thought we had picked a direction.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to win now's when I'm like, well, why did we trade Derek? We could win with Derek, and why did we trade Thad Young if we're trying to win? Because they make us better. And that's where I think we need to have our front office and our coaching staff get on the same page.
Yeah.
And figure out what direction we're going with this team. It's either we're losing and relying on this offseason, or we've been all in, and there's just been a confusing muddle of different philosophies going around.
Yeah, I agree, man. The reason I brought up Jakob is because I've done pretty much a full 180 on him. I've done a 170, if you will. Not a full 180, but because I hated him at the beginning of the season because I had went to a few games in person and saw him, and my eye test was sort of that he's too vulnerable. He turns the ball over a lot. He doesn't have good ball control. He sort of gets bullied and taken advantage of when he has the ball. And I might even do a video on him because my opinion has completely changed. You know, he's dunking, he's getting his rebounds, and he's putting up significant points. Like I don't remember what game it was, but I think like him and DeJounte both had like 20 or something like that. So you know, my opinion has definitely changed on him. He's becoming more efficient in my eyes, and so I think he could be a good piece to keep. But we'll have to see. I won't necessarily be upset if he's traded, especially for someone like DeAndre Ayton. But at the same time, I'll be more resistant to it than I was at the beginning of the season. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, the one thing about Yaka, like I said, I would love if he stayed with the team. The thing I worry about is I think the way he's been playing and the market for big men that it is now, I think he's probably going to command $18 to $20 million a year, and I just don't know if I want to pay 18 to 20 million. I mean, that's more than DeJounte Murray makes. And granted, we got him on a very cheap prove it deal, but you know, the point stands.
Yeah,
that's $4 million less than LaMarcus Aldridge was making for us, to average 20 and 10 and be an all-star a couple years. So that's where I get skeptical with that. And all, but you know, I won't be mad if he stays. I know a lot of people get mad because I say I'd always love to see Keldon Johnson as the bench and the leader of the bench unit.
I saw that with Clan. I understood what you were saying. Like Manu was great because he came out and he was playing against like the second strings like for a lot of the games, and that's why he was winning 6 men of the year. So Keldon can do the same thing.
Keldon's one of those also just, you know, yeah, he's hitting three-pointers at a high clip, but he's got such a slow shot. And I think in order to keep him effective from long range, Pop has to play him at the power forward because he's against guys that that are a lot slower than he is, so he can get that shot off.
Yeah.
And he can get his drive off. And that's where I wonder, you know, if we get a power forward. I mean, look at these guys like Banchero and Jabari Smith. You know, I would start them. I could see Keldon just feasting off of second units as a small forward. You know, he still loves to just barrel in there and get to the rim, and he's not big on, you know, shot creation and stuff like that. It's mostly just a straight drive to the rim. You can't tell me he wouldn't put up numbers on these weaker second units out there.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm just like, man, I could see that. And I don't have a problem with him starting, but I'm all about trying to figure out ways to make these rotations effective. That said, I think we need to get Devin Vassell the ball more. We're using him in a lot of catch and shoot sets. And I think they need to give him the ball and let him create some, because he's shown some pretty nice flashes of an ability to create his own shot. And you know, just about every game that he gets over 10 shots, he scores 20 or more points. And I think if we got him up into like 15 shots, he could be a pretty decent scorer for the Spurs.
Yeah. Which one did you want to touch on next if you still have time, or do you got to head out? We got rookies and contenders.
Let's go the last one with the Cavs and talk about them some. I like
the Cavs versus the modern Cavs versus the Spurs.
Yeah. Because I was glad you made that video, because it was funny. I actually brought up the Cavs on one of Clan streams, and like,
yeah, you were talking about Darius Garland. Like, the reason I wrote it down is because you were like, Darius Garland is a Tony Parker that can shoot, and I was like, well, then you got to think about, you know, is Jarrett Allen Kawhi, is Evan Mobley Tim Duncan? Like, are we making another Spurs team here? So he's definitely the closest things in terms of like his play style that I've seen to Tony Parker. Like, when he gets in the lane and launches off that floater, it looks identical to Tony to me. He's a little bit more modern with the shot, but I love Darius Garland. That guy's a stud. But they are a little bit built like we were. I think they have the potential to, you know, be a little bit more dominant in terms of athletic ability than the Spurs were. I mean, Evan Mobley is kind of that DL role where he's inside, outside, handles the ball, shoots, and all that. But he's better than Boris Diaw was, let's be honest. And Jarrett Allen has that anchor role that Duncan has. Obviously, Duncan's better all the time, but they do play a similar thing. You know, they're there for the cleanup and stuff. And don't look now, but over like his last 20 games, Isaac Okoro's shooting like 38% from three. Yeah.
And playing really good defense. I mean, it's funny because I'm about to release a video where I condemn people for doing this, but that's kind of their version of Kawhi there. I'm releasing a video on draft comparisons and how often people compare guys to Kawhi Leonard and how it needs to stop.
Yeah, people. But, that's why I was debating whether or not to even bring the Cavs Spurs thing up, because especially with the Spurs too, like people hate comparisons, but especially Spurs fans, because like I made the video. Is Giannis this era's Tim Duncan? People did not like that video. People hate like whenever we compare Spurs players, but I feel like Giannis, honestly, he has a similar style of game besides Giannis obviously being more behind the arc now, becoming more versatile, because that's the way big men have to be nowadays. So.
And I also just look how he conducts himself. I mean, he's kind of under the radar. He's just like a quiet, nice guy. His team's never really talked about, but they're always there in contention.
Yeah.
And all that, and he's always there to shoulder the load. St. Peter's is up by 1.
We're both paying attention to it, yeah.
But yeah, and like with draft comparisons, I'm about to release this video once I finish editing it. I'll throw out there, like, when I say that Darius Garland is similar to Tony Parker, it's by no means me saying, oh, they're going to have an identical career. Darius Garland's going to be a 4-time champ and a multiple-time All-Star. No. It just means that the way they play is similar.
Yeah, people don't understand that. It's like there's a difference between play style and career similar.
I got flamed years ago, and I mentioned this in my video because one of the big names going around in the draft was Tony Bradley. When he was coming out of Carolina in 2017. And I did a write-up on him, and my comparison for him was Tim Duncan. And everyone's like, dude, that's a huge stretch. I'm like, I didn't say he was going to be Tim Duncan. Yeah. It's just, the guy even runs like Tim Duncan, and I stand by that to this day. If you watch how Tony Bradley does, he's got the same set of moves. His shot is the same form as Tim Duncan's. Obviously, Duncan was much better, but we've got to stop doing this thing where we compare players and assume it's how their career is going to turn out. It's just their play style. And, I mean, I can say that I play basketball like Zach Randolph because I can hit the occasional 3 and I like to bruise in the post, but I'm nowhere as good as Zach Randolph. Come on. Yeah. Like, come on, the comparisons, if you're going to compare careers, it stops with that we both wore number 50, and that's it.
Yeah.
So when we make this comparison, we're not saying that they're going to be the Spurs and win 5 titles. It's just they're built very similarly.
Yeah.
And, even Cedi Osman coming off the bench is that knockdown shooter, kind of like we had with Marco Bellinelli coming off the bench. And stuff like that. So they're embracing similar roles and things like that. I mean, Lauri Markkanen coming off the bench playing like a Diaw role, kind of like a combination Thiago Splitter, Boris Diaw role, honestly. So I mean, it's a fair comparison to make. But that Cleveland team, man, they're fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and let you go, man, because I gotta be somewhere as well. And you were saying you only had a couple minutes anyway. But it was great talking to you again. I feel like we had a really productive episode. It was a bit of a longer episode, but I mean that's good because I haven't uploaded a podcast episode in a couple weeks. So yeah, man, me, you, and Clan got to do like an episode like all 3 of us because I mean Clan's talked with me, I've talked with you, you talked with Clan. So it's like, we have a triangle of connections here. We need to put them all together and get us all in one place one time soon. So
we're actually, you heard it here first, but me, him, and Maddie, our guy, we're working with one of his friends, talking about starting up our own podcast where we just shoot the shit and stuff like that in draft season. If we do that, we'll have to have you on there.
Oh, nice, man.
We can all just hang around and talk basketball, talk draft, and all that.
I won't be able to show up there consistently because I'm still in school, but I mean, maybe a few guest appearances now and then.
Whenever you can, man. Whenever you can.
Yeah, but other than that video you said with draft comparisons and a lot of draft stuff, anything you wanna shout out real quick? I already got your Twitter and your YouTube up on screen, so follow Swisheel and everything. So
Yeah, my Twitter's mostly just going to be filled with college basketball tweets these next couple weeks.
yeah, that's why I had you on. So
Go check out my YouTube channel at Swisheel. It's been a little slow lately. Had a lot of work, and I'm trying to compile as many of these draft prospect videos as I can, so I can just release them all and have the views tick up as the draft starts. So should be getting some more stuff on there soon. But I'd like to think that my other videos are good enough that they can stand on their own. So y'all go check them out.
Yeah, definitely go check out Swisheel. It's on the screen here now, and it'll be in the description and in the YouTube video. But that's all I got for this episode, guys. If you've stuck around this long, for the video watchers, you can see we got the follower count up here. So go watch these live whenever they're up over at twitch.tv/easygingy. You can talk in the chat and talk with us like Regulator and Brandon and Ian here. So and we're trying to hit 50 by the end of the year. We're already at 40. So go follow that. All my socials are also in the description and on the screen here. So go follow those. It's pretty much Nathan Butnet on like everything. Like it's either Nathan Butnet or Gingy, because Gingy's the name of the YouTube channel. So TikTok, Twitter, Instagram is all Gingy or Nathan Butnet. But that's all I really got for this video. Go listen to the audio versions if you don't want the video version over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all that good stuff. And I will see you all in the next one, guys. Nathan Butnet, episode 23.